Happy Tuesday. Welcome back to another live edition of Behind the Point Spread. I'm Travis Justice. I'll be one of your three co-hosts tonight. Of course, this is a fully interactive show. If you're watching on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn, you have the comment section. If you have a question for Dr. Rob or Scott Spreitzer, feel free to write it in the comment section. However, we have a better way for you to contact us, and that is by going to your phone and picking up right now, calling 402-543-5556. That's 402-543-5556. If you have a question on something you hear tonight or about a specific game you want to know more information about. We have 5 games we're going to cover tonight. We'll show you what those are a little bit later on. And we're actually going to dip our toes into the NFL. We don't do that often, but we will be dipping our toes into the National Football League. Joining us tonight, as they do each and every Wednesday night, Dr. Rob Zatechka and the one and only Scott Spreitzer. Good evening, gentlemen.
How are you guys doing?
Guys.
You know what? The Labor Day weekend has thrown me off, right? Having Monday off and then picking up, it feels like Tuesday today. I feel like I'm running behind. It's driving me crazy. I need to get back to some normalcy.
I took Monday off too. I got to tell you that I would have been on Clemson. So I decided to pass. Very good pass. You know, sometimes the best bet is to no bet, you know, and that's what we did on Monday. But I'm really ticked off. I got a game that we're going to talk about a little bit later on the show. I never whine about bad beats, but I'm going to whine this time. I'm going to stomp some grapes, tell you about a bad beat. And then I have a real big complaint, and this is a serious complaint. I have not been in my pool in a week. I mean, the weather's been that bad to where I have not been able to jump in the pool in about 7 days. That's probably the most tragic part of this whole spiel that I'm going on right now.
Has it been cold?
It got really – we had floods galore, probably the most rain I've seen over a 3-day period in Las Vegas in my 39 years in this town. It was crazy.
I saw Dave Remington got like stranded in at Burning Man.
In
Nevada.
Oh, he was up at Burning Man. You know,
yeah.
I don't know if he's with Chris Rock. I read Chris Rock had to walk 6 miles to safety. So, you know, I mean, but yeah, I didn't know Dave was up there, but it was a nasty situation up there, no doubt about it.
Okay, help me out, Scott. Is Burning Man really this art festival, or is it just an orgy? Because it really seems like an orgy to me.
Oh man, I just can't picture Remington at an orgy. But
yeah, if you know Remington, he's not your classic orgy kind of guy.
That's true, but he does.
I don't know what a classic orgy kind of person is. I guess I don't.
Oh, he's on your screen. He's next to you. It's
not my cup of tea.
I'm just saying it's a freak show. Everything I see from Burning Man is a freak show.
I get people ask me all the time, people from back home, which is Omaha, Bellevue, and people ask me all the time, hey, we want to go to Burning Man. What do you know? And I'm like, I've never been. And I've heard it's kind of crazy. We got Life is Beautiful, LIB, as they call it in Las Vegas, every September. That's about as crazy as I get at my age of 56 years. But Burning Man's not for me. Burning Man's got a different style of person who lands there for a couple of days. But yeah, they were hit hard by rains, mud, just all kinds of problems. So I'm glad to hear that that Dave made it back safely, because it wasn't easy from what I heard.
Yeah, he was up there. He was posting updates on Instagram there for a while about getting trapped there for a few days.
Yeah, you know, I always think I want to go, and then I'm like, you know, I just don't think I could handle it over that long of a period. I mean, Danica Patrick was hanging out there. Chris Rock was hanging out there. All the superstars. It's not what it used to be either. It's turned into like this corporate place to be seen. So it's not like it used to be, you know, 20, even back when it started, it was like an art festival and an orgy too, all thrown into one. So
it was leftover hippies basically when it started, and just a good group of people, you know, that like to, you know, it reminded you of maybe Woodstock or something like that, the crowd that would go there. But like you said, now it's like the thing to do. So if I was ever going to go, it would have been 10 years ago, not when it's become the thing to do. I might venture out to the Electric Daisy Carnival next year. I haven't done that yet. If I was 25 or 30, I would have been there already. That might be something I go to. That's held here in Las Vegas for 3 days. And that can get a little crazy, but it's not as nuts as what Burning Man has become.
The thing to do right now is to work with Scott Spreitzer. If you like what Scott has to say tonight, and of course, if you've listened to him over the years with us, you know he's one of the smartest men we know. So if you want to work with Scott. And all you have to do is text the word Doc Talk to the number 29022 and get a free $60 trial of premium member picks from Scott. Or you can visit docsports.com and sign up for the free 60 on the upper left side of the website. And we do have a deal for you tonight from Betfred Sports. It's the NFL promo. The NFL, of course, getting ready to start this weekend. In fact, tomorrow already. And when you bet the NFL with Betfred, your 10th wager on the NFL is free. This is a limited time offer. So let's say you've got 9 NFL bets in, that 10th one is going to be free. And then you start over again. So the NFL promo, when you bet with the NFL with Betfred, your 10th wager is free. And let's start with the National Football League. We don't do this very often. But with that promo, we wanted to throw a game out there. And Scott, this is what we're starting with. The Tennessee Titans taking on the New Orleans Saints.
Well, guys, I'm happy to say that I'm back in the contests again at the Circa, at the Westgate, and I'm a big NFL guy. I got, I kind of really got into this business being a college football guy, and I still am. But I've made more money over the last decade in the NFL. And basically, since I broke away from just looking at so much of matchups and more into situations, which in professional sports, because you got a bunch of all-star teams in every league, it's a situation where you do look to play spots more than you do, this secondary against, this receiving core and things of that nature, because there's just so much darn skill out there on the field for every team. And since I've done that, the NFL's been really good to me. And I've got in the contest before. It's like $1,000. Back then, it used to be a $1,500 entry at the Westgate. Now it's $1,000 entry, and was able to turn that into about $30,000 a few years ago, finishing in the top 15.
Wow!
And the winner walks away with about $1 million from each of these two contests. So you need a lot of luck, but you're usually in the running if you do this for a living late in the season. That's all you can ask for. As far as this game, guys, I actually jumped on this game a month ago. I took 3.5. I took 3.5 with Tennessee about a month ago, and it's a couple of 3.5s out there still, but mostly it's 3s. It's that as that's come down a half a point. You see the total there sitting at 42, some 41.5s. I'm a big Mike Vrabel fan, the head coach of Tennessee, and he had this team at 7-3 last year after 10 games, and then my gosh, the injury bug hit. Probably with this team more than just about every team in the NFL, and they weren't able to sustain or maintain what they had built throughout those first 10 games. So now that they're pretty healthy at the start of the season, I think they're a little bit undervalued. And as far as New Orleans is concerned, Derek Carr's a great guy. I mean, everybody likes him. He's a good teammate, all that kind of stuff. But I think he's getting a little bit too much love in his first game for New Orleans. And I remember watching him with the Raiders. As much as I rooted for this guy when I didn't have money against him, it was a situation of, it just seems so often in a key moment of the game, he would just make a almost panic-looking decision and throw a pick, or on 4th and 1, just make a really bad decision and make a bad play and lose yardage. And it cost the Raiders a couple of wins over the last couple of years. So I don't know where my trust factor is exactly with Derek Carr right now. I think it'll be better as the season progresses. A couple of numbers I wrote down here, guys. Mike Vrabel teams 21-9-1 against the spread when getting at least 3 points. Dennis Allen, the coach of the Saints, 21-31-1 against the number overall, while cashing just 33% of the time as a favorite as a head coach in the NFL. Those are just the icing on the cake. I like Tennessee and took the 3.5. As long as they're getting 3, I like Tennessee in this game.
I got a question. What's easier? Because we're going to transition to college. What's easier to bet for you, the National Football League or college football?
From a handicapping standpoint?
Yeah.
NFL, just because of the time. The time that it takes me to do the NFL is, 1/4 of the time that it takes me to do college football. And that's, partially because of the amount of teams that you have in college as opposed to the NFL. But also, I got to dig a lot more for college. I got to look at those matchups. NFL is like 80% situational for me. And I used
Is it just that the talent's a known quantity at that level?
Exactly. And like I said, every team's an all-star team. It's just like the NBA, the WNBA. I mean, all those teams in professional sports are all college football all-star teams. And so there's not that huge difference between a receiving core for Tennessee and a defensive backfield for New Orleans. You can't really quantify a big, I can put power ratings on the NFL. I don't even really do power ratings on the NFL. And I stopped a few years ago because the teams are so close when it comes to the overall skill. And it really comes down to which team is better at paying attention to details, which coach might be better when it comes to play calling in certain spots that kind of drives that confidence into his team under any situation where maybe the other head coach is young or inexperienced or doesn't have that ability. And that's kind of what it comes down to for me in the NFL. But my gosh, and NBA is the same way, guys. I mean, it's so situational in the NBA. The only major league sport or professional sport to me where I have to sit down and really look at individual matchups is Major League Baseball, obviously because of the starting pitchers being different every night.
Man, well, speaking of college football, that's where we're going to transition to next. And tonight's games we're going to be taking a look at. These are the four. Again, if you have comments, go ahead and leave them in the comment section on YouTube. I believe Facebook takes them too. If you want to talk to Scott directly, if you want to talk to Dr. Rob directly, you can call 402-543-5556. That's 402-543-5556. Tonight's games, Wisconsin on the road at Washington State. You have the big matchup between Steve Sarkisian and Nick Saban as Texas takes on Alabama. Then two rivalry games to finish the night with. You have Iowa at Iowa State, and then Nebraska will travel to Colorado. So, Scott, you said you had a beef to pick. Is it bad beat story time, or we got to wait yet?
Yeah, it's funny because I actually had a client who went on Twitter and whined for me, which I was very thankful because I hate doing that because you win some that you shouldn't also. And nothing drives me crazier than saying, I can't believe I lost that game. I should have. I hate the I should have won. Either you win or you don't. I keep notes on why I win or lose, and then I can look at that and say, okay, I need to maybe change my handicap here or there. But yeah, what happened was my top play last Saturday lost. I had won the previous week with the under the Ohio-San Diego State game, liked another total, and I'm not always a big totals guy in college football, but I liked Washington State and Colorado State under 55. And with about 14 minutes to go in the game, they've got 32 points. And so I'm like, all right, about 10 points a quarter. I can dig it. I had this about a 44, 45 point total on my projection, and it looks like it's going to land about 44, 45 points. So over a short period of time with the game at 32 points, we saw a pick six followed a couple of minutes later by a kickoff return for a touchdown of 98 yards. We had a 75-yard touchdown pass by Colorado State. 75-yard touchdown pass by a quarterback who in his other 19 passes threw for 135 yards, all in a matter of just a few minutes. So obviously it goes over the total with those three scores. And it was one of those deals where I'm like, come on, not out of the, and you want so bad to go on and say, man, I was right. I was on the bad side of a really bad, and you just can't do it because it's too much whining. But I wanted to talk about it on this show because bad beats do happen. I'll tell you what, I'll be telling you when I get lucky over the course of the season, not at the Burning Man and Travis's lingo, but lucky when it comes to beating point spreads. And I'll inform you guys when we do get fortunate. But yeah, I mean, it was a tough beat, and it just soured my. I got to the point.
Yeah, but if you get lucky, I mean, if you get lucky in this business, you get unlucky too. I mean, there's got to be downturns.
I mean, I think my record in baseball extra inning games this year, guys, is like 1-9. You're just lucky or you're not sometimes. And that's another reason why I only play. If I play an under in baseball, I only play the first 5 innings because of the ghost runner at second and it goes to extras. The way they're handling their pitchers now, a guy gets 5 innings and he's gone, if that, starter. But anyway, yeah, so it was a tough beat, and it's one of those that stuck with me throughout the weekend. And I'm usually able to shake that stuff off. I think because it's week 1 and you're just not ready yet to stomach those kind of beats. You get ready and you get toughened up by week 3, but not necessarily out of the gates.
Right. And just as a shameless plug, if you want to bet with Betfred, you could have taken advantage of the bad beat insurance policy. Just letting you know, you could use the bad beat insurance policy. First game, we're going to go to the Big Ten. Wisconsin's on the road, taking on Washington State. This is a 6:30 game on Sunday. Is it Sunday or is it Saturday? Did I forget to switch the day? I think it's Saturday. I forgot to switch the date. That's my bad. Wisconsin, a 6-point favorite. The over-under at 59 here, Scott.
Yeah, we didn't see that Phil Longo offense last week, really, for Wisconsin. We saw a lot of running again. We saw a Badger offense maybe throwing the ball a little bit more than they would have in the past, but they still ran the ball several times. I think it was 40 out of 71 plays, and they gained over 300 yards rushing the football. Something I saw out of Mordecai last week, guys. I know he's supposed to be that guy that, learns this Phil Longo offense really fast, and they start I was going to say Air Coryell, but I guess it's called Dairy Raid in Madison. And I'm watching Mordecai, and I saw some things that reminded of stuff that he got away with last year at SMU against the AAC, which was, every once in a while making poor decisions. He threw 10 picks last year, and he's going to have to shore that up. He had a couple of picks in this game. He looked to make a bad decision in that pass offense from time to time. I'm going to chalk it up mostly to the fact that he's in a new environment. He's got Phil Longo's offense that he's learning behind an offense that would much rather run the football. So I'm looking at some of their numbers last week. Of course, you got the 2 running back system, including Allen, who had the huge game running the football last week for Wisconsin. Last year, these two teams hooked up. I took the points with Washington State. They were a 17-point dog in last year's meeting. You guys will recall they won that game outright. And I think that's about the time we started predicting a coaching change in Madison. It happened like the very next week, like the following Monday.
You were Scottradamus on that because you called it, man.
Yeah. And so we saw the coaching change. But, last year's game, it wasn't so fortunate that Washington State covered. They were always in the game. They were fortunate to win outright as a 17.5-point dog. They had 10 first downs. The Badgers had 22. In a very easy offense, maybe not to stop, but to prepare for when you talked about the Badgers offense last year. So they get out first down 22-10. Wisconsin outgained them 401-253 in that game. The problem with this game with Washington State, besides the fact there are a few holdovers from last year's Wisconsin team that'll be thinking revenge, although the coaches are different. The problem with me is that they can't run the football. It's Cam Ward, a very fine quarterback for Wazoo, or nothing else. And, like last week, he had 13 carries. The next guy on Washington State's offense, or the next most carries, was 7 out of one of their running backs. So I like Wisconsin to be able to slow down the Washington State offense a bit. They held them to 250 last year, and Cam Ward was part of that team. As far as a total, I kind of like a little bit more. When you look at Luke Fickell teams that he's coached on the road with the total in the 56 to 63 range, he's 11-1 to the under on the road. And I think you're going to see a lower scoring game that doesn't quite get to that number of 59.
Wow, you're going with the under. Would you? Has Wisconsin? Did I hear a stat? And correct me if I'm wrong. Did I hear a stat that Wisconsin on the road against Power 5 teams, non-conference, is not? They've struggled.
Yeah, I don't have exact numbers on me, but yeah, it's I don't like to lay a lot of points with this team when they go on the road against Power 5 teams. And again, Washington State, they can surprise again. Cam Ward's a heck of a quarterback. That guy can throw all over the field. He can throw long. The one thing about bringing Phil Longo to this team is that I think he had more pass completions or attempts of more than 25 yards at his old job in one season than Wisconsin had like in the previous 3 or 4 seasons combined. The problem was last week, I didn't see Mordecai enough out of him to make me think that they're ready to flip the switch and become that dairy raid offense that we all heard about in the offseason.
Yeah, I'm going to pay attention to Oregon State and Washington State closely this year, just because of the us against the world, have something to prove, belong in a Power 5, because they're going to fall down to the Mountain West because there's nowhere else to go for those two teams, and they're going to be wanting to make a statement. Whether they can still remains to be seen.
Well, Oregon State, I mean, I think they're a hell of a different animal than Washington State, though.
I would agree, but they're in the same boat right now.
Yeah.
I get that. They got an established offensive line that's really good, and they got Clemson's quarterback. I mean,
and they look good in week 1. So
they really did. And they're not trying to restart with a new coach. Like, well, not so much Washington State. I guess I'm thinking Wisconsin on that one, but I just think they're a little bit of a different animal than Washington State, trying to put them into the same boat.
And Dabble might have wanted to keep that quarterback that now resides in Corvallis.
In hindsight.
So true. Our second game is really the feature of the weekend. This is Texas at Alabama. It's Saturday, 6 o'clock on ESPN. Bama, 7-point favorite. The over-under at 54.5. Scott, I would have thought this is where like everybody was going to in college football as far as betting goes.
You would have thought, and it's not. And it's the Colorado-Nebraska game, getting more money placed on that football game than any other college football game as we speak. In fact, I saw one book earlier today outside of the state of Nevada that was saying that they had more money on Colorado than any NFL team so far for this week's games. which is crazy. That wasn't a big, deep pocket book that takes all kinds of serious, sharp money. But again, it's just telling you the popularity that Deion Sanders is bringing to the college football game. I'd love to say Nebraska's 50% of that money coming in, but it's certainly not. It's because of Deion, and folks are hammering that football team in their games for 2 weeks now. But what I should have mentioned earlier with that Wisconsin game. Wisconsin about a 9-point power rating favorite over Washington State if the game is played on a neutral field, so folks can start their capping from there. As far as this game, Alabama is, they're 5 points better in their power ratings than Alabama on a neutral field. And then, of course, Alabama being the home team of this one, so to speak. And if you look at what's gone on so far, they've been as high as an 8-point favorite. They've been as low as 7, as you see there. A lot of 7s out there now, a couple of 7.5s. I'd say about 90% of the books now at 7. Total's been bouncing all over the place. I've seen a low of 52.5 this week and a high of 57.5. Right now, most of the books, including Betfred, at 54.5. So as I kind of hammer this out, handicap this game, last year's game was an absolute miracle. If you guys watched that game, that Bama was.
How much did that game play into this?
I think it had a little bit to do with that number. I really do, because I think that you give Alabama more than 2 points or 3 points for home field. And I just mentioned that most legit power ratings have Bama a 5-point favorite on a neutral field over Texas. So, I don't rate every college football team as having a home field advantage of 3. Bama's got a serious home field advantage, and I would make that more of a 5. So if you're looking at power ratings plus my home field advantage, you're looking at about a 9.5 to 10-point spread. But also you got Quinn Ewers, who last year, guys, before he got hurt, he was going right through the Alabama defense he was 9 for 12. Yeah. He had a $134 through the air. He was not being harassed at all. He was escaping any pressure, finding guys downfield. And one thing about Bama's secondary, their defensive front, spectacular. Their secondary's banged up, and I know when you say Nick Saban, you're just talking about there's another 5-star who's a second string who's waiting to fill in that next spot. But they're banged up in the defensive backfield. And I think, as long as Ewers can stay healthy, that he's going to be able to exploit some of that. The defensive back, he's got an incredible room as far as wide receivers are concerned. That wideout room is top notch at Texas. So I'm looking at kind of what happened last year. And I also noticed that last year's total closed 64.5. So basically you're talking about another 10 points higher than this total. And I get some of that because you got a new quarterback for Alabama, some new faces on the offense for the Alabama Crimson Tide. I think these teams are going to trade points a bit. I like it over 54.5. And again, it's been anywhere from 57.5 to 52.5. And at 54.5, I think it's an over. I think we see some points piled up again in this game.
Do you like Alabama to win outright?
I do. I lean towards Bama at 7 or less. So I haven't played that yet. If I sneak in on this one, I might end up having to play Alabama and lead a 7. I would say right now I'm 70-30 that I'm just going to play the total. But at 7 or less, I think Bama's the side. I want more than 7 if I'm going to take Texas in this game.
Now, if you look right behind me, you've got the Iowa State over here, and Iowa there, and the Hawk without the beak. You got the Cy-Hawk matchup this week. Interesting, Scott, because Iowa had a great first quarter with Cade McNamara, and then the offense dropped off the face of the earth in the second, third, and fourth quarters. Iowa State easily beat Northern Iowa. However, it only ran 45 plays, 250 yards of total offense, but still was able to score 24 offensive points, which was kind of shocking to me. Here, a lot of people are going to point towards, and I'm going to be honest, before we get into the game, when you guys watched football last week, I talked about this on my radio show today. I didn't notice the new clock rules. It didn't affect me at all. And I know Chip Kelly bitched about it. Some other coaches have said something. And I know when you're not getting your set amount of plays in, but as a fan, I didn't notice it. I didn't notice it at all. Did you guys?
I did, but only in the sense that it seemed like commercials were constant.
I would agree with you there.
They filled that time with commercials, and it was that was annoying as hell to me.
Yeah, I agree. It was like the viewing of the game, or whatever you want to call it. I don't know if aesthetics are the right word, but the viewing of the game was not as fun as it usually is because it felt like every other, play I was watching a commercial. I didn't notice a big difference in play calling. I mean, Colorado TCU still combined for a busload of plays. teams with poor offenses or grounded out offenses did what I expected to for the most part as far as the amount of plays. I think the shocking thing in that Iowa State game, not just that they only had 45 plays, but their opponent, Northern Iowa, had 72 offensive plays in that game. 27 fewer offensive plays, yet they win by 21. And I know only 23 of those points were scored by the offense in that game. But, and by the way, this power rating on this game, even though Iowa struggled over the final 3+ quarters on offense, they are still about a 6.5 point neutral site favorite as far as the power rating is concerned. So you see 4 there. We've seen some 3.5. It's about where it should be in this game. The total sitting at 36.5. The power rating for the Hawkeyes dropped 1.5 points. And believe it or not, the power rating for the Cyclones, despite a 21-point win, dropped about 2 points.
Really?
And the one thing that the Cyclones can say, though, is we took on a top 20 FCS team program. And Iowa played a badly rebuilding Utah State team. We did the show last week, Travis, and I said to you, if I'm an Iowa Hawkeye fan, I want to see an impressive 31-6 game at least. I want to see the offense doing things over a full fourth quarters, not just in the first couple of possessions of the first quarter and then going dormant. So even though they were that close to maybe hitting that 31-6 final when they were up 24-6, it wasn't pretty on offense again. No. And so it's a situation. And I saw your first tweet. You were doing a broadcast on the game, and I did see Iowa's rolling Utah State, and they were. It was about halfway through the first quarter. And I'm thinking, wow, maybe they got it together, even though, again, the Aggies aren't exactly a team to judge a Power 5 school against this year. And then I go back and I wasn't watching the game, and I look at the game at halftime. I'm like, what the heck? I started jumping into the game a little bit more. So I'd be very worried about this Hawkeyes team the rest of the season. Maybe not here, but after this Iowa State game. I mean, 36.5, the under looks too good to be true with these two stinking on ice offenses that we've seen so far.
Well, and two really good defenses too. The sad thing is I'm thinking about taking the under here. It was 10-7 was the final last year, and I was consistently their over-unders were in the 30s last year, so you never knew what you were going to get. I'm sitting there going, boy, at 36.5, I think it might go under there. And that's scary when you're saying that at 36.5.
College football, 36.5, it looks too good to be true. And, we said it last. Iowa's not the team that's going to hide what they're doing for their next opponent on offense, because they got to. I mean, Brian Ferentz has this 25-point deal. He missed on 23 points out of those 25 last week. So you got a quarterback who I like in Cade McNamara a little bit more than what ISU has got going. Plus, the Iowa State quarterback was a little bit banged up last week, but he's going to play this week at last check. I'm going to trust McNamara and mostly the Iowa defense a little bit more than the Cyclones and say that Iowa leaves Ames with a win. I can't lay points. I can't lay more than a field goal on the road with this kind of offense. And again, that under, and I already did an article on this saying I like under 36.5. At what point do you say, my gosh, the Iowa Hawkeyes defense is great and their offense is equally as bad as the defense is great, but I can't play under when it's 36.5. At some point you get to that point. Again, out of this team, if they ever get a big lead, I'm not worried about backdoor covers, because if you're Brian Ferentz, you can't take a knee. You got to keep driving and thriving to score more points and to show your dad, your head coach, that you've got things turned around a bit.
Of course, the game everybody's been waiting for us to talk about is Nebraska, Colorado. This has gotten a lot more attention now because of Colorado's win at TCU last week. Nebraska, of course, lost at Minnesota. Colorado now a 3-point favorite. The over/under at 59.5. This has just been crazy. After Deion won last week, and by the way, I was openly rooting for him. I'm probably in the minority. I want the dude to win, because I love that he's disrupting college football. I love how he just has people just up in arms about the way he's doing things.
You're that guy that loves chaos. I am. See that, no doubt about it.
My wife will tell you that. I love chaos.
Well, see, that's one of the reasons I got my signal down a little bit for tonight's show, because I want to mess with you a little bit, because I know how much you like chaos. But anyway, as far as this game is, I'm watching the game at the Westgate last week on Saturday, and there wasn't an empty seat in the house. I don't know what that book holds, maybe, 1,500 people. There were 1,800 people in there, and I didn't see a single person rooting for TCU. I did a show on VSiN last week at the Circa on Friday. and I gave out over 41.5 team points for TCU. They got to 42. So very happy about that. And I had mentioned in that show that I was doing, and we might have talked about it on this show last week, I didn't know if TCU's defense could get their crap together and be able, because Colorado, as we knew going into week one, everybody who was honest about their evaluation of Colorado. By that, I mean everybody I know who wasn't against Deion for disrupting college football knew that this team had a Power 5, top-notch, heavily recruited quarterback. They tried to make it sound, I hope you guys have talked about this at all on or off your shows, but they made it sound as though Sanders, the quarterback, was like this guy they got out of Jackson's. No, Sanders was a highly recruited stud.
Okay, Travis.
And he had great receivers around him, Rob.
Travis,
yes.
What did we talk about? What did I say on the podcast?
So Rob talked about this in the latest edition of the Doc Talk podcast, which you can check out episode 17 on our YouTube channel. Rob's like, Deion wants to sell all these kids as HBCU, guys, but Shedeur would have been playing at Florida State if Dad wasn't coaching it.
He decommitted from Florida State to go to Jackson State. The kid's a Power 5 kid, and I think so many people have lost that. It's
caught up. Yeah.
Yeah. The guy. And here's the thing. He was a Power 5 kid coming out of high school, and he tore it up at Jackson State. I mean, in Deion, the last 2 years, he's 23-3 as a head. Yeah. Well, now he's 24-3 as a head coach over the last 3 years.
So, okay. Oh, go ahead, Scott. As I covered you up.
You can go ahead and read that question. I can answer it real quick if you want.
Well, yeah, I believe it's Andy asked, with all the money hitting CU, why hasn't the line moved much after the initial move? I think it's moved quite a bit from what it started out, a couple of weeks ago, right?
Before those games were played last week,
yes.
Nebraska was a 7-point favorite. So it's moved 10.5 points. And so they were as high as 8 in one locale over the summer, Nebraska.
Wow.
So, I can remember back in the day, they don't do this anymore, but the Golden Nugget about 13, 14 years ago, early May, it was like the first Friday of May, they would release their college football games of the year. And they would have about 100, big time college football matchups throughout the course of the season, week 1 through the end of the regular season. They'd put numbers up and they would say, okay, starting at Friday, May 5th or whatever at 12 noon, we're open it up. And I'd go down there every single time on that day. It was kind of, you guys ever see the movie Rounders, the poker movie?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember when when Ed Norton's character and Matt Damon's character, Matt Damon's girlfriend had just dumped him and moved out, and they go down to Atlantic City. They go down to AC. They're going to, play a little bit poker at the Taj. And they walk in, and at the table is everybody they play poker with up in New York. And they're like, I came down to, it's like Chesterfield North down here. Or South, I come down to play a little poker, and everybody, okay, that was the scene at the Golden Nugget back in the day. Every single wise guy, sharp and everything else, I would see that particular damn day at the Golden Nugget. It was the coolest thing, man. I'd be talking to guys I hadn't seen since a previous football season. There'd be 50, 60 guys and would start hammering out plays, $1,000 here, a dime here, whatever. And the limit was I think was 1,100, was a dime. And that's the only time that I can remember, other than maybe a Ohio State Buckeyes line 5 or 6 years ago, where a line moved based off of a couple of games or one game that much. Because back then they put out the line in May, and Team A might be a 7-point favorite. Well, by the time the actual week 5 game 6 months later rolled around, they might be, have moved 10 points based on what happened in the first 4 weeks. But a regular season week, one game to see a line move 10 to 11 points is pretty much unheard of.
Let's hear from Deion as he's getting ready for his first Nebraska game and what they call a rivalry in Colorado.
Rivalries are rivalries. There's some more severe than others. I think everywhere you go coach, from high school on up or from youth league on up, you're going to have rivalries. And just learning the dynamics of the different rivalries I like it. It's delightful. So I've learned the severity, the serious nature of this rivalry, and I'm embracing it 100%. This is personal. That's the message of the week. This is personal.
First of all, I love the fact that he puts the hood up on the hoodie and he wears shades during the press conference. But I'm trying to figure out why this is personal, because he has no connection to Nebraska whatsoever.
Okay, I love that.
But how is it personal?
It's the point that he's trying to make is that he's basically saying, I buy into the rivalry.
Okay.
That's all he's saying, is that he understands that Nebraska and Colorado hate each other's guts. And he's basically coming out and saying, okay, you know what? These two teams don't like each other. The fan bases don't like each other. Fair enough. I'm buying in. I love that.
Okay, you
That's
explained
a good
it.
thing.
I see. I took it completely different, and you've explained it.
I mean, yeah. Now, does he have any relationship to that? No. And that's fine. I like the fact that when you see a guy like this, where he's going to stand up and say, okay, here's a rivalry that goes back to probably, as much as McCartney wanted it to be a rivalry back in the early to mid 1980s, it's you got something going back 40 plus years here. Mm-hmm. And Deion comes in year one, week 2, and he's saying, yeah, let's embrace this.
Okay,
let's let this be a deal. Let's let the fans get involved. Let's let the players get involved. Let's let everybody hate each other's guts. I mean, that sounds negative when I say it, but I mean, that's the stuff that makes college football fun. And he's buying in to a rivalry that he walked into and has no experience with, and he's saying, fair enough, I'll buy in.
See, Scott, that's why he's smart. That's why he's a doctor. That's why he's got the DR in front of him, because he can explain things.
But I agree. I mean, it's like, when's the last time we saw a college coach this cocky? And I mean that in a good way. I'm not saying that in a negative way. Barry Switzer, I mean, at OU, I mean, yeah. When was the last, could you imagine Tom Osborne in 1994 or 5, Rob, when you were on the team showing up in a hoodie and sunglasses?
No, but that's the thing is, I mean, you look at Switzer, it's kind of the whole thing. You wait long enough, tragedy becomes a comedy.
Yeah.
You talk to any Husker fan now who is alive from 1969 onward, or was at least following Husker football from that time period onward. Everybody loves Barry. You will I mean, I would argue that Barry Switzer he might have stronger fans in Nebraska than he does in Oklahoma.
And I think the reason is, Rob, because Dr. Tom has embraced Barry and showed that they're friends.
Okay, those two guys were friends back in the 1980s.
I get it.
They got along. They were friends back then. It's an understanding of what makes great rivalries great. And somebody like Deion makes this great. It's, if you look at Deion and you look at what he's done and you go back and take a very objective view at what he did at Jackson State and then what he's done in, 1 week. I mean, that it's not a big sample size. Let's be honest here. But the fact that he's come to Colorado, he flipped a roster, he brought his kid who, I mean, I've been saying this for a couple of weeks now. We said it we talked about it on the podcast last week. The kid is the kid was a 4-star recruit coming out of high school who was committed to a good Power 5 program, had multiple Power 5 offers. And he went to Jackson State, lit it up there. Now he's at Colorado. There's no reason to think why he wouldn't light it up at Colorado as well.
Especially against a defense like TCU.
I mean, that was a little suspect. I'll give you that.
Oh, by the way,
I gotta give you guys a couple of quick notes here. And I'm not going to say that this makes Nebraska, gives them a better chance to win. TCU's defense has now allowed 155 points in its last 3 games, 52 points per game, 561 yards per game, 6.7 yards per play, 10 touchdown passes. They've only picked off 2. They got 2 picks in their last 110 pass attempts against. They're picking off less than 2% of all passes thrown against them this secondary. And they gave up over 5 yards per carry combined to Georgia and Michigan. So I don't want to take away too much from Colorado and what Deion and his kid has done. That was not a test last week. TCU stinks. They have no defense.
So listen to this. I don't know if you guys can hear it. I don't have the video of it, but I have the audio. Hopefully you can hear it. This is TCU linebacker Cody Hodges, or Johnny Hodges, rather, today, in one of the most classic sound bites about his own team that really just tells me he's a hell of a leader. Hopefully you guys can hear this.
I guess you can say it's a wake-up call. I don't know how losing in the national championship by 60 isn't a wake-up call, but right now we're definitely the laughing stock of college football, having 22 missed tackles, having who knows how many missed assignments, making our defensive coordinator look awful, just making his defense look like it's a childhood kid's defense and him getting all this slack. So if it's not a wake-up call, then I don't know what it is.
Could you guys hear that?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's brutal honesty from a player, man. I mean, the laughing stock of college football.
I like what he said, making our defensive coordinator look bad. I love that. Player putting it on their shoulders.
That's a kid. Yeah, that's a kid stepping up right there, which kudos for him. But, it does underscore the fact that, that is not a good defense. I mean, I would never go back and rest on that as the reason that if Nebraska loses to Colorado, I don't go back and rest upon that at all. But it's, Colorado's got some work to do. They've got some shoring up that they're going to have to do as well, too.
Special teams, defense.
Exactly, in terms of turning this around. But the fact of the matter is that they're a dangerous team. And they're a team that's going to do some damage this year.
So that danger could come in the offense, obviously. And last week, Nebraska played Minnesota. The tempo against Colorado is going to be much different than what the Huskers saw against the Gophers. And Matt Rule is aware of what that tempo is going to be.
We've been practicing versus tempo all training camp because it's a good way to practice, right? On defense, it's a good way to prepare. It's a good way to get in shape. The things that we teach, tracking the near hip, all the different fundamentals that we believe in, they show up in these games, right? What has a tendency to happen is when it goes that fast, guys start to get sloppy. And this, for our guys, they're going to have to make this football. This has to be football. This can't be about tempo. This can't be about altitude. This can't be about playing a ranked opponent or being on the road. It just has to be football. And if we do that, that's what we've done all training camp. We'll have a chance.
All right, talk me off a ledge here, guys, or at least you're going to say I'm smart. I'm not buying the Colorado hype yet, and my son Owen gives me a hard time because he says I believe too much in Nebraska. I've always given him the benefit of the doubt. I'm not a homer. I'm not a fan, and Rob, you know that, but you're going to turn around and call me that.
Dude, you love the Huskers.
Shut up. But I think they win this weekend. Scott, am I stupid? Am I what am I thinking here?
Well, first of all, you're supposed to bet Nebraska if they've gone, or any team that's gone from a 7 or an 8-point favorite to a 3-point dog based off of 1 week. You're supposed to bet that team as a sharp or whatever you want to call it. And I know some who've taken the points. In fact, the Circa just the other day had Nebraska +4. And I know guys who jumped on it right away. I wasn't quick enough on the trigger to get the 4. And now it's down to 3. So you're supposed to, it's just a matter of, you got to have a good quarterback who can throw the ball from time to time. We don't need Jeff Sims to throw the ball 25, 30 times. But when he does throw it, he's got to, oh my gosh, look at more than one receiver, big guy. This guy's a physical beast. He hit the genetic lottery. But I don't like the way he stares down his receivers, and Minnesota caught on to it late in the game. They knew where it was coming. They didn't have to. Anyway, I was going to say real quick, here's a real cool number that I found on Jeff Sims. This is I would never have this guy throw in the opening quarter. And here's why. I went back after last week's game and I was looking at all his stats and numbers. When he
hold on, Scott.
Huh?
That's like the quote of the week here, where you're like, I would not have this guy throw in the opening quarter. That's brutal, dude.
I don't mean to be mean, but the stats back me up. I went back and looked at his 3 seasons at Tech and his 1 game at Nebraska. And here's what I found. Okay, first of all, we know 31 touchdown passes, 26 picks in his college career. But check this out. Career first half numbers, 12 touchdowns, 19 interceptions. Second half in his career, he's got 19 touchdowns and 7 picks. That's his, and I hope you guys are hearing this because it looks like I froze up.
No, you didn't. You're good. You were fine.
So anyway, 12 first half touchdowns, 19 first half interceptions. Second half touchdown to INT ratio in his career is 19-7. First quarter, taking it one step further. You know about me in subsets. I see an angle or a trend. I'm digging deeper. First quarter, Jeff Sims in his career, 6 touchdown passes, 12 interceptions. That's it. So this guy's going to run the football, and I'm going to hand the ball off to my fullback and running back, and I'm going to probably throw another Osborne play out there if I want him to throw a pass in the first quarter. And, let him dribble it twice if that's how he gets his rhythm when he threw that touchdown pass, whatever he needs. But stay away from typical pass calls until this guy gets it going. I don't know what else. 19-7 touchdown to INT ratio in the second half throughout his career. That is a pretty darn good touchdown to INT ratio. That's better than 2. It's almost 3-1. Most college quarterbacks would take that over their entire career, over an entire game. So I looked at that and I said, all right, don't throw the football in the first quarter. Stay out of trouble. And also the problem is with throwing the football too much in this game is I believe you still got the guard playing left tackle. And it was kind of tough last week to watch. Minnesota's offense isn't any good. So how good is Nebraska's defense? They were better than last year. They played that 335. I like the way they played, although they need a better pass rush, a more consistent, pass rush. But Minnesota's offense, that was nothing to brag about either. So we're talking about Colorado piling up yardage and points against a bad TCU defense. I like what I saw out of the Black Shirts, but they also played against a weak offense. And it all is going to come together this week in Boulder, and we're going to find out which team benefited the most from going up against a unit that wasn't too hot the previous week.
Good stuff. I'd like to use Rob. He goes back and finds the subsets of the subset of the subset. And when you can break down the first quarter action, I hope Matt Rule's watching this tonight, because what Scott just said is don't throw the football in the first quarter. In fact, don't even throw in the first half. Right? Just don't even throw in the first half. That's a bit of advice you're getting from a really, really smart guy here on Behind the Point Spread, live on YouTube. All the best knowledge is found here on YouTube. And here's some good knowledge for you. You can take advantage of the Betfred Sports NFL promo. When you bet the NFL with Betfred, your 10th wager is absolutely free. It's a limited time offer. Of course, the NFL starts tomorrow night. So take advantage of this from Betfred Sports. Of course, don't forget, you got to be 21 plus. And if you do have a gambling problem, make sure to call 1-800-BETS-OFF. And if you want to work with Scott Spreitzer, he's just proven once again that he's the smartest guy around when it comes to this stuff. Text the word Doc Talk. Again, text the word Doc Talk to the number 29022 and get a free $60 trial of premium member picks from Scott. Or you can visit DocSports.com and sign up for the free 60 on the upper left side of the website. Any other good knowledge you got to drop on us, Scott? Because you've come with big numbers tonight.
Yeah, it's one of those things again where you've got a week 2 in the college football ranks, week 1 in the NFL, and I just tell people just don't go crazy that first week. I lost last week, by the way, and I want everybody to know that, because I will come on here at times and say, hey, we went 5-0 last week. I did not win last week, and it was not fun. And it started with that total I was whining about earlier. That still got me. It's still in the back of my mind.
By the way, 3-0 last week, baby.
I'm just gonna say I'm gonna call you probably tomorrow afternoon. We're gonna get your plays because you swept the board.
Here's the deal. I was sitting in the studio getting ready to leave. I was almost done with my show, and there were some night games. I'm like, I just flip on the app, the Betfred Sports app. I'm like, Tulane -6 at home. I like that. Then I went, Rutgers -6 against Northwestern. They're at home, and that's going to suck. And then I got the
that's going to suck.
Then I got the Penn State West Virginia total at 49. As soon as I placed the bet, it went up to 51. So I had a 2-point cushion at that point. I got home. I told my wife, I said, I can take you to dinner. I won $75 total.
You know what I like about those picks? The first 2, by the way, I was kicking myself for not playing halfway through the game. That was sharp-ass stuff, Mr. Justice, because the sexy dog of the week last week was South Alabama, and you had Tulane, and you got that. That was the sexy bet of the week, and I'm sitting there with a buddy of mine on Friday going, we ought to add Tulane. We didn't, of course. And then what was the other side you mentioned?
I did Rutgers Northwestern. And the end game, I got Rutgers at -6. The end game, after they scored first, went up to -19. I'm like, God, I'm glad I got this at -6.
Greg Schiano brings discipline, and Northwestern went through all that crap. And there was one more game, those two games. So you were on two games that were very sharp that you played. It wasn't luck. And then the total, anybody bets an under, they're sharper than the average bear, because most casual bettors and fans of the game love to play overs. They love a high school game. And then the other one that I'm kicking myself right now for not having bet was Virginia Tech and revenge over Old Dom. I don't know what I was thinking to not play that. And again, I'm not going to, this isn't going to be an every week thing where I come on and say, I should have done this. I should have done that.
Woulda, coulda, shoulda.
But in week one, I have to say that, because that was a perfect spot for Old Dom to get knocked off after beating Zatechka last year. But sharp stuff by you, man. I really love those two sides, especially, man, that you had us. And again, everybody was touting South Alabama last week. So smart move, dude.
I try to be smart. Nobody ever calls me smart on the show. Dr. Rob and you are the smart ones. I never get called smart, so I got to take it where I can get it. Gentlemen, Scott, we went 51 minutes tonight. 51. We're going to turn this into an hour show, Rob.
I'm trying to keep my mouth shut.
We can just keep going and going and going. Guys, thank you so much. We're going to be back next Wednesday, 8 o'clock Central Time. If you, again, take advantage of Scott's deal, text, what is it? I got to get to it. What is it? It is text the word Doc Talk to the number 29022 and get a free $60 trial of premium member picks from Scott Spreitzer. For Scott Spreitzer and Dr. Rob Zatechka, I'm Travis Justice. We will talk to you next week on Behind the Point Spread, brought to you by Betfred Sports.